us today. Today is the alphabet J, and it's J for Jesus. And since we looked at Islam yesterday, we're going to look at the founder of Christianity today. And thank you very much for following us. Thank you very much for the feedback that you're giving us. And it really keeps us, motivated to do these series. So thank you so very much for all your likes. And please share, please tell your friends about it. Please click the subscribe button. And we're really, really so incredibly happy to have you all with us. So, Jesus, also known as Jesus of Nazareth, Jesus Christ, was a first century AD Jewish preacher. To be more precise, first AD Jewish preacher, if you go according to, uh, you know, uh, Christianity, who became the founder prophet of Christianity. Um, Technically, Christianity was founded after him, but it is his preachings, his gospels, which are the basis of Christianity itself. And the gospels, there are four versions of these gospels written by Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. And these are the gospels which are accepted. There are also a large number of other gospels, which are often called the Gnostic gospels, because they don't really agree so much with Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. So it's a very interesting thing that the New Testament is the same story told four times by four different followers of Jesus, four of his intimate disciples. There is also a gospel according to Judas. There is one page of a gospel according to Mary that has survived in the Gnostic gospels, and there are gospels by a number of other people. They more or less tell us the same story. He was a Galilean Jew, a Nazarene, baptized by John the Baptist. His mother was named Mary. His father was a carpenter called Joseph, and he was supposedly conceived immaculately, i.e., without father. His mother was found out to be pregnant, but a virgin. So that is why she is often known as the Virgin Mary. Joseph of Nazareth very happily married her, and did not hold it against her that she came pregnant to the marriage, and that was one of the great things about him. They were traveling, and they were at Nazareth, at this little town called Nazareth, when um, Mary delivered Jesus in a small barn in which they were living uh, overnight. And the barn is surrounded by animals, and there is normally on the straw, there is an image of Jesus surrounded by his parents and the three wise men who came searching for him. So these are part of the myth and legend of Jesus. He died in his 30s after being crucified by Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Judea. Um, this was the time of many prophets, many messiahs, and many holy men in this region. What stood out in Jesus' case was that Jesus died for what he believed in, and according to the Christians, was resurrected on the third day after his death and ascended to heaven. Some say he went on to live a full and normal life, and there are many different versions, including an amazing one that says that after his resurrection, Jesus moved to Kashmir and he spent his last days over there. Yes, there is a book called Jesus Lived in Kashmir. If you would like to read it, please do so. His most common representation is crucified upon a wooden cross. This was a typical method of execution during the Roman period. Uh, Unlike what is usually shown in the Christian process, the crucifixion would be through the wrists and the ankles, because the hand itself would be too weak to actually hold the weight of the sagging body. And it was a horrendous way to kill somebody. It was a horrendous punishment because you did not die of the crucifixion as such, but you died of asphyxiation as your body sank down and you could not breathe anymore. And you would have to keep pulling yourself upwards with your arms and giving yourself excruciating agony, or push yourself upward on the nail to which you had been crucified. Your arms and your legs would usually be tied to the cross. It was a truly barbaric and truly ghastly way to die. Um, Jesus was crucified along with two common criminals on a hill called Golgotha. And this hill has then, of course, become a very, very important place in the mythology of Christianity, the story of Christianity. He is usually shown nimbate with a light around his head. He is long-haired, bearded, naked except for a loincloth. There is normally a bleeding wound in his side where he was speared by a Roman legionary. And on his head is a crown of thorns. This was mockingly placed on him, and he was called Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, by Pontius Pilate. And that's what it says on the board above him. And this board or this piece of paper was stuck on the cross to further humiliate him and his followers by the Romans. And it has become very, very much a part and parcel of the iconography of Jesus. When Jesus is shown crucified on the cross, invariably there is a small banner above him on the cross with the letters INRI, which are Iusus Nazarenus Rex Judarium, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. He's also very often depicted aniconically or just as a plain cross. And the cross or the crucifix then becomes the single most important symbol of Christianity. And there are a number of variations on the cross, and you can look those up on the internet if you want to. But the simple plain cross, the wooden cross, is usually that upon which Jesus is seen. His most common other depictions are as a small child in the arms of his mother Mary, where he may or may not have his right arm extended outwards with two fingers joined together, a very common gesture in Jesus' iconography. Both of them will be shown nimbate, and there are a large number of these icons that we know of from various periods of time, right from the Byzantines and the Greeks and the Copts, that we have these images of Mary and her infant son, Jesus. His birth is a common motif, as I said, and he's usually shown in a manger surrounded by animals and the three wise men. Other common depictions, of course, include the very, very famous Last Supper, the last meal that he had with his disciples when he prophetically told them that he would die the next day and that he would be betrayed by one of their own. And when everybody was aghast and said, who tell us? He said, he turned towards Peter and said, you who are so excited just now to tell me this will renounce me thrice before the cock crows. And of course, it was Judas Iscariot who sold Jesus as such to Pontius Pilate and the Romans for 30 coins of silver. And therefore, the traitor's fee has always been mentioned as 30 coins of silver, 30 pieces of silver. In the Gospel according to Judas, of course, Judas says that he was told by Jesus to do this. And therein lies a very different story for those who are interested. A translation of the Gospel of Judas is available on the internet. He is also shown very often holding a lamb in his hands. And this is very often the Lamb of God, and the fact that Jesus was a shepherd to his flock of lambs who are his followers. He is shown standing with both arms outstretched with a golden heart depicted upon his chest. This is the Sacred Heart of Jesus. A variation has him touching his heart with his left hand and his right hand raised in gesture of benevolence, kind of usually like this or like this. A very common gesture seen in Catholic imagery. He also is shown as Jesus the King of glory, Jesus the King of heaven, where he's depicted crowned, seated in front of a glowing cross very often, and usually with angels above, below. Alongside, a variation has him holding the orb, and this again is one of the divine symbols of Christian kingship, and therefore Christian kingship is considered to be divine because it is ordained by God himself. Variation, as I said, has him shown with a crucifix at one end of a long scepter, and there are many other lesser known factors. There are the 14 stations of the cross, the 14 different moments from when Jesus is taken. He is tied to the cross, he is made to take the cross up the hill, where he stops. These are all very important points in the story of Jesus' crucifixion. His crucifixion, the lowering of his body, and the placing of it into the tomb that was made for him are all the 14 stations of the cross. They are also a very important part and parcel of his iconography. So the Jesus on the crucifix is shown in a number of different depictions. Some can be very simple, some can be very complicated. One of the most famous of these crucifixes is the silver crucifix that is used by the Pope very often. And you can see the Pope holding it in his hands. There are a number of them which are part of the papal regalia. There are some which are incredibly bloody, like early Spanish and Portuguese crucifixes, which you see immediately below the Pope. On the extreme right-hand side, you see one which is made in the Byzantine style or the Greek style, where you can see blood gushing out of the wound in his side. And there are, of course, multiple different variations, many of them depicting on them the various saints and the various disciples. So you can see the 12 disciples of Jesus on the cross in the center and the bottom. And there are, of course, many others like this. These are two of my favorite modern depictions. I mean, they're quite old now, no longer very modern. You have on the left-hand side and the right-hand side two depictions of Jesus on the cross by Salvador Dali, the great surrealist. On the left, I think, is during his Cubist phase. And on the right is the crucifixion of Christ. It's St. John of the Cross. And this is a view seen from above. And there is, of course, the city where he lived, Portligat, shown below. So there are multiple renditions of the crucifixion, and almost every single great artist in Europe has multiple versions of this. There are triptychs, duos, so on and so forth, with this image and this symbolism on them. There are a number of them by Picasso, for example, so on and so forth. So this is a very, very common image that you will see amongst the various different artists, not just in Europe, of course, but in other places as well. This is a typical modern rendition of the manger scene that you see on the left-hand side. You see the three wise men who have brought gifts for him. You see the lambs in the manger. You see Joseph and Mary, and of course, the infant Jesus. On the right-hand side is a beautiful icon of the Byzantine Greek style, and it is a beautiful icon of the Nimbate Mary holding on to her child, the infant Jesus. These are, again, as I said, highly prized and worshipped, and are very, very well known to us. You also have the scene of Christ being baptized. That's John the Baptist on the right-hand side, another monk, as you would like to call him, a religious figure of his time, supposedly a heralder of the arrival of Jesus. And here he is baptizing Jesus, and you see, various angels, etc., around him. And you see the dove on top representing God. You also have very well-known scenes of Jesus at the temple in Jerusalem. The top is Jesus as an infant, using his wits to battle the various Judaic teachers at the temple itself and astounding them with his understanding, his skills, his mastery, and his diction. And at the bottom, you have a very peculiar scene, which is heavily debated in Christianity, where he empties the Temple of Solomon of all the moneylenders who have taken over the premises. This, of course, is highly symbolic, once again, of what was happening to the Judaic faith at that time. This perhaps is one of the greatest examples of one of the most famous paintings of all time. And it is this painting represents the Last Supper. Of course, since it has to be from our viewpoint, they're not sitting across each other, but in a line. This is Jesus and his disciples. So along with all of his disciples, Jesus is seated here. He invites them to the Last Supper. He breaks bread and he pours them wine, and he says, "This bread is my body, this wine is my blood." And that is the sacrament of the Christians. So when you take the Holy Sacrament, this is what is given to you, the wafer that is dipped traditionally in wine. I think in most churches in India now, it is in water. You partake of Jesus himself. This was painted by the great Leonardo da Vinci in the Sistine Chapel. And at some point in the past, somebody actually cut a doorway right through this beautiful mural, which you can see in the center over here. And This mural was repainted many times because Da Vinci experimented with his colors. There was a huge process of cleaning up this mural. The reason it looks so fuzzy is because years and years of depredations carried out onto it had to be removed. And this is the original mural as it was conserved. So essentially, from the left, Bartholomew, James the Lesser, Andrew, Judas, Peter, and John. Jesus in the center, Thomas, James the Great, Philip, Matthew, Thaddeus, and Simon on the right hand side. That is the layout. And you see Jesus over here looking wistfully down, surrounded by all his disciples who are in great argument as to which one of them is going to betray him to the Romans. So other iconic representations are seen. On the left-hand side is a typical image of Jesus seen in the Byzantine style, though this is a more modern rendition. And around it are different scenes from the life of Jesus, right from his birth all the way down to his rising to heaven. On the right-hand side, you have a similar depiction of the crucifixion of Jesus and the 14 stations of the cross, where he was beaten, where he was whipped, and where the cross was finally erected after he was nailed to it, and then his body was ultimately lowered from the cross itself. So these are the 14 famous stations of the cross, as they are called. And these are very, very much a part of the iconography of Jesus, and very often are seen on the aisles of the church. In both of the aisles of the church, you will very often see these depictions, 7 to each side. On the left-hand side, once again, is a typical Byzantine Greek mural of Jesus. You'll notice he's shown dark, slightly sallow-skinned, black hair, black beard, dark brown eyes, holding a copy of the Bible, and with his hands in a gesture of benevolence. In the center is Jesus in his role as Jesus, the King of Heaven. You see the angels surrounding him. You see the glowing cross behind him. You see the crown being held up above his head. And on the right-hand side, you see him with the crown actually resting on his head and the Sacred Heart of Jesus visible upon his chest. So there are many, many depictions of Jesus and his life. This is perhaps one of the greatest modern iconic sculptural representations of Jesus. This statue is called Christ the Redeemer and sits on top of the Sugarloaf Mountain at Rio de Janeiro, overlooking the city of Rio de Janeiro. You can actually see it on the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side is a close-up of the same image. And it is a truly wonderful, truly beautiful image that was made over there. And it's one of the number one tourist locations in the city of Rio de Janeiro. And it's very difficult to actually understand the majesty of the statue unless you're there. And then every once in a while, photographers get shots like this. It is lit up in the night, by the way, so it's not lit up by the lightning. And it has lightning conductors on the skull and the arms of Jesus, so that since it's a tall image standing over there, it attracts lightning and the lightning grounds it. So you sometimes get very, very spectacular images of lightning striking the Christ the Redeemer statue. Thank you very much for being with us, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Tomorrow is the alphabet K, rather close to my heart, and it will be K for Krishna. So these are our different handles: at INSTUCEN on Twitter, at the rate INSTUCEN on Instagram, INSTUCEN Trust on Facebook, and INSTUCEN Trust on LinkedIn. Do follow us, do use the hashtag, do share what you've seen here, do tell your friends about it, do hit the bell icon and subscribe to our channel so that you know what we're doing. We're doing some amazing series of certificate courses on English poetry and on prehistory, on music, and on gardening. So do log in to our pages and find out what we're up to. And thank you very much for being with us. And I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care. Good day. Shabba khair.
Done, sir.